The palace of the Valdris Empire stretched across the horizon like a mountain of crystalline spires, each one reflecting the twin suns of Valdris Prime. Within its labyrinthine corridors, where the insectoid rulers conducted their affairs with cold efficiency, humans moved like shadows. Cleaning, serving, invisible, Jaiwin knelt on the cold marble floor, her knees aching as she scrubbed a stain that had been there for decades. Her hands were raw and red, but she kept working. In the Valdris Empire, stopping meant punishment. She had seen too many humans dragged away for being lazy, and she never saw them again. The palace was enormous, bigger than any city Jaiwin had ever heard of. She had worked here for 3 years, ever since she turned 16. Before that, she worked in the factories outside the capital. Life as a human in the Empire meant one thing: serving the Valdris without question. The Valdris were strange creatures to human eyes. They stood on 2 legs like humans, but that was where the similarity ended. Their bodies were covered in a hard shell that shimmered with colors: purple, green, and blue. They had 4 arms, compound eyes that reflected everything around them, and mandibles that clicked when they spoke. Their translators turned those clicks into words humans could understand, but the sound still made Jaiwin's skin crawl. "You there, human?" Jaiwin looked up quickly, her heart jumping in her chest. A Valdris overseer stood above her, its compound eyes staring down. She could see her own reflection repeated 1,000 times in those eyes. "Yes, master," she said quietly, keeping her head bowed. "The Empress requires your service. Follow me now." Jaiwin's blood ran cold. The Empress? She had never even been near the royal chambers. Normal cleaning servants never went there. Only the highest-ranking Valdris were allowed in the Empress's presence. Why would the Empress need a human? She stood up quickly, her legs shaking. The overseer didn't wait for her to gather herself. It turned and walked down the corridor, and Jaiwin had to run to keep up. They walked for what felt like forever, going deeper into the palace than Jaiwin had ever been. The corridors here were older, darker. The walls were carved with symbols that hurt her eyes when she looked at them too long. Finally, they stopped in front of a massive door. It was made of black metal and covered in more of those strange symbols. Dust had gathered in every corner around it. This door had been closed for a very long time. The archives wing. The overseer said, its translator making the word sound flat and emotionless. This section has been sealed for 3,000 years. The Empress wishes it cleaned before the Grand Council meets next week. 3,000 years? Jaiwin stared at the door. Why now? Why her? The overseer pressed his hand against a panel beside the door. Ancient machinery groaned to life, and slowly the massive door began to open. The sound echoed through the empty corridors like thunder. Dust poured out in clouds, making Jaiwin cough. When the dust settled, she could see inside. The chamber was huge, with a ceiling so high she could barely see it in the darkness. And in the center of the room, rising up toward that distant ceiling, stood a figure. It was tall, at least 50 feet from head to toe. It wore armor that seemed to absorb the light around it, making it difficult to look at directly. But what made Jaiwin's breath catch in her throat was its shape. It wasn't like a Valdris. It wasn't like any of the other alien species she had seen in the palace. It looked human. "Clean it," the overseer commanded. "All of it. You have 3 days. Water and supplies are in the corner. Do not leave until the work is finished." Then the overseer left, and Jaiwin was alone with the statue. She stood there for a long moment, just staring. The figure was humanoid, but larger than any human could be. Its armor was smooth and elegant, with lines and angles that seemed to flow like water. One hand rested on the pommel of a sword that was taller than Jaiwin herself. Slowly, she walked closer. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. When she reached the base of the statue, she reached out and touched it. The metal was cold under her fingers, but there was something else, a faint vibration, so subtle she almost missed it. She found the cleaning supplies where the overseer had said they would be. Buckets, brushes, cloths, and strange Valdris chemicals that smelled like sulfur. She filled a bucket with water and got to work. The dust was incredible. It coated everything in layers, so thick she could write her name in it. As she cleaned, She realized the metal underneath wasn't like any metal she had seen before. It seemed to shift colors as she moved around it, going from silver to gold to a deep blue. By the end of the first day, she had barely cleaned the statue's boots. Her arms ached, and her back screamed with pain. She slept on the cold floor, using her cleaning cloths as a pillow. The second day was harder. She worked her way up the legs, then the waist. The armor was covered in symbols, like the ones on the door, but different. These looked almost like letters, but twisted and strange. She traced them with her fingers as she cleaned, wondering what they meant. On the third day, she finally reached the head. The Valdres had brought in scaffolding, which she climbed carefully. The statue's face was hidden behind a helmet with a narrow visor. She could see nothing inside, just darkness. Jaiwin dipped her cloth in water and began wiping away the centuries of dust from the helmet. As she worked, her bare hand brushed against the metal of the visor. The eyes opened. Golden light blazed out, so bright that Jaiwin screamed and stumbled backward. She grabbed the scaffolding railing just in time to stop herself from falling. The entire chamber shook as the statue moved. It wasn't a statue at all. The statue's head turned toward Jaiwin, and dust fell like rain from its massive shoulders. Servos that had been silent for thousands of years hummed with power. The golden eyes focused on her, and Jaiwin felt warmth wash over her body, like standing in sunlight. System reboot complete. A voice boomed through the chamber. It spoke in a language Jaiwin had never heard before, yet somehow she understood every word. Genetic marker detected. Terran DNA confirmed. Scanning complete. The giant figure straightened, its armor plates shifting and adjusting. Designation: Sentinel 7. Guardian-class autonomous intelligence. Status: fully operational. Awaiting orders from Inheritor. Jaiwin's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her hands gripped the scaffolding railing, so hard her knuckles turned white. This couldn't be real. Statues didn't move. Statues didn't talk. I don't understand, she finally managed to whisper. The machine knelt down, bringing its massive head level with hers. When it spoke again, its voice was quieter, gentler. You are human. Your genetic code carries authorization protocols from the Terran Federation. I have waited 10,000 years for your kind to return. The head tilted slightly. Studying her, tell me, Inheritor, what year is this by the Terran calendar? I don't know what that means, Jaiwin said, her voice shaking. We don't have a Terran calendar. We count years by the Valdres Empire. It's year 3247. The machine was silent for a long moment. The fall was more complete than we feared. You don't know, do you? You don't remember what humanity was. Before Jaiwin could ask what that meant, the chamber doors exploded inward. Empress Zetvara stormed in, followed by a dozen armed guards. Their plasma rifles were already raised, pointed at Sentinel 7. Destroy it, the Empress shrieked. Her translator crackled with the force of her anger. Destroy it before it kills us all. Sentinel 7 moved faster than anything that large should be able to move. One massive hand swept through the air, and suddenly every rifle in the room went dead. The guards pulled their triggers again and again, but nothing happened. They stared at their weapons in confusion and fear. I mean no harm to you or your empire, Empress Zetvara, Sentinel 7 said calmly. But I will not be destroyed. I have a duty to fulfill. After 10,000 years of waiting, I will see it done. The Empress's antennae quivered. Was it rage? Fear? Jaiwin couldn't tell. What are you? What is this thing? I am a guardian. I am a shield. I am a promise kept. The golden eyes turned back to Jaiwin. And this human is my commander, whether she knows it or not. Jaiwin felt like the world was spinning around her. Commander? She was a cleaning servant. She was nobody. Empress, Sentinel 7 continued. I request a private audience with this human. There is much she must learn, and much you must understand about the true history of this galaxy. The past you fear is returning, and only the children of Terra can stand against it. The Empress stood very still. Jaiwin could see the calculations happening behind those compound eyes. Finally, the Empress spoke. Very well, But my soldiers will watch from outside. One wrong move, machine, and I will collapse this entire wing. I don't care if it destroys half the palace." "That would be unwise," Sentinel 7 replied. "But I accept your terms." The Vauldrars filed out slowly, their dead rifles still clutched in their hands. The Empress was the last to leave. She stared at Jaiwin for a long moment before the doors closed. Jaiwin was alone with the machine again. She climbed down from the scaffolding on shaking legs. "What did you mean? Children of Terra? What is Terra?" "Terra is the old name for your homeworld, the world some of your ancient texts call Earth." Sentinel 7 walked to the far wall. His massive hand pressed against a section that looked like all the others, but when he touched it, the wall opened. Ancient mechanisms groaned and complained, but they still worked. Behind the wall was another chamber, smaller than the first, bathed in soft blue light. "Come," Sentinel 7 said. "You must see this." Jaiwin followed him into the hidden room. The walls were covered in screens and control panels. As she entered, they flickered to life, showing images she didn't understand. 10,000 years ago, humanity ruled the stars, Sentinel 7 began. His voice carried a sadness that made Jaiwin's chest ache. "The Terran Federation spanned thousands of worlds. Your people built wonders, stations that harvested the power of stars, ships that could cross entire galaxies in heartbeats, cities that floated in space itself. The screen showed images of these wonders, massive structures that dwarfed planets, ships so beautiful they made Jaiwin want to cry. Humans, thousands of humans, walking freely, their heads held high. That's impossible," Jaiwin whispered. "Humans are weak. We've always been servants. We've always been slaves." "No." Sentinel 7's voice was firm. "You were made weak. You were made to forget. It was the only way to survive." He gestured at the screens, and the images changed. Now they showed something dark, something wrong. It was like looking at a hole in the universe, a place where nothing existed, and it was spreading, consuming everything it touched. "An enemy came," Sentinel 7 said. "We called it the Void. It came from beyond normal space, beyond normal reality. It consumed everything. Planets, stars, entire civilizations vanished into nothing. The Void didn't just destroy, it made things stop existing, as if they had never been at all." Jaiwin watched in horror as the images showed massive battles. Human ships, thousands of them, fighting against the spreading darkness. She saw explosions, saw ships disappear into that terrible void. "Your ancestors fought for 100 years, Sentinel 7 continued. But the void couldn't be destroyed by weapons. So they built something else. A weapon that would push the void back, seal away outside the galaxy. But the price..." He paused. The price was everything. The images changed again. Jaiwin saw humans activating a massive device. Light spread across the galaxy, pushing back the darkness. But then she saw what happened to humanity. Their ships stopped working. Their stations went dark. On 1,000 worlds, humans forgot how to use their technology, forgot what they had been. The weapons scattered humanity across the galaxy, Sentinel 7 explained. It erased your technology from your minds. It made your civilization collapse, made you primitive again. Within a few generations, humans were no more advanced than cave dwellers. It was the only way. "Why?" Jaiwin asked. Tears were running down her face, though she didn't know why she was crying. Because the Void hunts advanced civilizations. It's attracted to technology, to power, to organized intelligence. Your ancestors chose to hide humanity in plain sight. They made you appear weak, primitive, conquered. They made you seem insignificant. Sentinel 7 turned his golden eyes to her. And they left us, the Guardians, scattered across the galaxy, waiting, watching, until the day humanity was ready to remember. "But why now?" Jaiwin asked. "Why did you wake up?" "Because enough humans exist again. Because your genetic markers have reached the threshold needed to reactivate our systems." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was grave. "And because the Void is returning." The doors to the archive wing burst open again. This time it wasn't the Empress. A tall Valdris in military armor stormed in, followed by more soldiers. Jaiwin recognized her from palace gossip. General Vixera, the Empress's sister. She was known for her cruelty. Enough of this nonsense, Vixera snarled. Her translator made her voice sharp and cold. This machine is a threat to the Empire. It must be destroyed. And the human with it. No. Empress Zetvara appeared behind her sister, walking calmly into the chamber. If what this guardian says is true, we need this technology. We need to understand it. You would trust a human? Vixera's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You would risk everything for slaves? Sentinel, 7 stepped between them, and Jaiwin. What you decide matters little now. The threshold has been reached. For more guardians have awakened across the galaxy in the past hour. The human genetic markers have activated our network. He paused, and his eyes glowed brighter. And I'm detecting something else. Energy readings at the edge of the galaxy. The same signature as the void. His voice became grim. The seal is breaking. The void is returning. The chamber fell silent. Even Vixera stopped moving. How long do we have? The Empress asked quietly. Weeks. Perhaps a few months if we're fortunate. The barrier your ancestors built is failing. Jaiwin felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. What do I have to do? Sentinel? 7 turned to her. You must learn. You must remember what your people once were. You must become what your ancestors needed you to be. He knelt before her, this massive machine bowing to a human cleaning servant. You must become humanity's champion. News of the awakened guardian spread through the palace like wildfire. Servants whispered about it in the corridors. Valdris officials argued about what it meant. And among the humans, something began to change. Miho was working in the palace engine rooms when it happened. He was a technician, one of the few humans trusted with maintaining simple machinery. He had been checking a power coupling when suddenly his mind exploded with images. He saw star forges, massive factories in space that built ships from raw starlight. He saw quantum reactors that could power entire planets. He understood how they worked, could see the mathematics and physics behind them as clearly as he saw his own hands. Miho screamed and fell to his knees. The knowledge flooding into his mind was too much, too fast. He clutched his head, and the other workers ran to him. What's wrong? One of them asked. Miho looked up at the power coupling he'd been working on. With his new understanding, he could see how primitive it was, how inefficient. I know how to fix it, he whispered. I know how to make it better. I know how to make it work like it's supposed to. He wasn't the only one. In the palace kitchens, a woman named Suji touched a serving cart and suddenly understood its molecular structure. She could see the metals it was made from, could envision how to reshape it, improve it, transform it into something more. All across the palace, humans were waking up. Ancient memories, buried in their genetic code for 10,000 years, were surfacing. They remembered things they'd never learned. They understood technologies that shouldn't exist. The Valdris noticed. Of course they noticed. And they were terrified. General Vixera gathered her most loyal soldiers in the barracks. This cannot be allowed to continue, she told them. The humans are changing. Soon they will be strong enough to challenge us. We must act now while we still can. What about the Empress? One soldier asked. She has forbidden action against the humans. Vixera's compound eyes reflected the lights of the barracks 1,000 times. My sister has grown weak. She thinks she can control the situation. She's wrong. The general's mandibles clicked decisively. We strike tonight. We take the palace. We execute every human within these walls, starting with the girl who woke that machine. That night, while Jaiwin slept in a chamber near the archives, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. She jerked awake, her heart pounding. Sentinel, 7 appeared in her doorway, moving with surprising silence for something so large. We must leave. Now! His voice was urgent. General Vixera has launched a coup. She's imprisoned the Empress and ordered the execution of all humans in the palace. Jaiwin's blood ran cold. How many humans are here? I'm detecting 3,000 human life signs throughout the palace complex. Then we have to save them all. That's not possible. Yes, it is. Jaiwin stood up, and for the first time since the Guardian had awakened, she felt certain about something. You said, I'm your commander. You said I have authority over you. Then I'm giving you an order. We save every human we can. Sentinel 7's eyes glowed brighter. As you command, Inheritor. They moved through the palace like a storm. Sentinel 7's shields protected fleeing humans as Valdris soldiers fired at them. The plasma bolts simply bounced off invisible barriers. The Guardians' weapon systems disabled security doors and cleared paths to the landing bays. Miho found them in a corridor, leading a group of engine room workers. Jaiwin, what's happening? We're leaving. All of us. Can you get to the other humans? Tell them to head for landing bay 7. I can do better than that. Miho's eyes had a strange light in them. I can hack into the palace communication system. I know how now. I don't know how I know, but I do. Within minutes, Miho had broadcast a message to every human in the palace. Landing Bay 7. Emergency evacuation. They came in waves. Kitchen workers, cleaning servants, technicians, gardeners. 3,000 humans who had lived their entire lives as slaves, now running toward freedom. 2 more massive figures appeared at the far end of the landing bay. Guardians like Sentinel 7, but with different armor configurations. Sentinel 3 and Sentinel 9 had arrived. Brothers, Sentinel 7 greeted them. Status: all Guardian units are now active, Sentinel 3 replied. And we've located it. The place we've been protecting for 10,000 years. Where? Jaiwin asked. A hidden installation. A place your ancestors built as a refuge. A vault of knowledge and technology. Sentinel 9's eyes glowed. A place called Bastion 9. It's time to take humanity home. Sentinel 7 moved through the palace corridors with Jaiwin on his shoulder. She held on to the armor plating, her heart racing as plasma bolts flashed past them. The Guardian's energy shield shimmered in the air, deflecting every shot. Behind them, hundreds of humans ran toward the landing bays. More soldiers ahead, Sentinel 7 said calmly. Hold tight. He raised one massive hand, and suddenly the Valdris soldiers' weapons sparked and died. They stared at their rifles in confusion as the Guardian walked past them, his shields protecting the fleeing humans behind him. Jaiwin felt something strange in her head, a connection to Sentinel 7 that she didn't understand. Through it, she could sense the locations of every human in the palace. She could direct the evacuation without speaking, just thinking about where people needed to go. How am I doing this? She asked. Your genetic code is activating, Sentinel 7 explained. The neural pathways your ancestors used to command our systems are rebuilding in your brain. In time, you'll be able to do much more. They reached landing bay 7 to find it packed with humans. 3,000 people, young and old, all looking scared and confused. 2 more Guardians stood at the bay doors, Sentinel 3 and Sentinel 9. They were slightly different in design, but just as massive and powerful. All humans accounted for, Sentinel 9 reported. But we have a problem. General Vixera has sealed the bay doors. They're made of reinforced titanium, 3 feet thick. Sentinel 7 studied the doors for a moment. Then all 3 Guardians raised their hands. Energy built in the air, making Jaiwin's hair stand on end. The doors began to glow red, then white, then simply melted away. Bay doors are no longer a problem, Sentinel 7 said. Outside, a small fleet of transport ships waited. They were old Valdris cargo vessels, not meant for passengers, but they would have to do. The humans loaded onto them as quickly as they could. Jaiwin stayed on Sentinel 7's shoulder, watching as families climbed aboard, as workers helped the elderly up the ramps. Miho appeared beside them. Where are we going? We can't just run. The Valdris will hunt us down. We're going somewhere they can't follow, Sentinel 7 said. Somewhere that's been hidden for 10,000 years. Somewhere humanity can remember what it once was. The ships lifted off just as more Valdris soldiers arrived. Plasma fire lit up the night sky. but the Guardian's shield protected the fleeing vessels. Within minutes, they had broken through the atmosphere and were heading into deep space. The journey took 3 days. The coordinates Sentinel 7 provided led them to a region of space that wasn't on any Valdris star charts. It was empty, dark, between the spiral arms of the galaxy where no stars shone. "There's nothing here," Suji said, looking at the navigation displays. "Wait," Sentinel 7 replied. As they approached the coordinates, lights began to appear. First just a few, then hundreds, then thousands. A massive structure revealed itself, a ring so large it surrounded an entire dwarf planet. Docking bays stretched for miles along its surface. Weapons platforms powered up, their targeting systems recognizing the Guardian signatures as friendly. "What is that?" Jaiwin whispered. "Bastion 9, Sentinel 7 said. "A Terran Federation military installation. One of 12 that were built during the war with the Void. It's been waiting here in standby mode, waiting for humanity to return." The transports docked, and the humans filed out into corridors that had been empty for 10,000 years. But as they entered, the base came alive. Lights flickered on. Life support systems activated. Computer terminals booted up, displaying text in a language that looked strange but that Jaiwin could somehow read. At the center of the base was a massive hangar, and in that hangar sat a fleet of ships, not like the clumsy Valdris vessels, but sleek warships that looked fast and deadly. They bore symbols that some of the older humans recognized, symbols from ancient stories and tribal markings that had been passed down through generations. "This is impossible," Miho said, walking up to one of the ships. He placed his hand on its hull, and suddenly information flooded into his mind. He knew how to fly it. He knew every system, every weapon, every control. "I know this ship. I've never seen it before, but I know it." "Your genetic memory is awakening," Sentinel 3 explained. "Your ancestors who crewed these vessels left their knowledge in your DNA. It's all still there, waiting to be unlocked." Jaiwin walked to Command Center, a massive room filled with holographic displays. When she entered, they all activated at once, showing a map of the galaxy. Red markers appeared at the edge of the map, spreading slowly inward. "The Void," Sentinel 7 said quietly. "It's breached the barrier. 3 star systems have already been consumed." Jaiwin stared at the spreading darkness. "Can we stop it?" The Terran Federation built the Aegis network for this purpose. 12 massive space stations that can create a permanent barrier around the galaxy, but they require human presence to activate. Specifically, they require 12 humans with command authority, activating them simultaneously. "Then that's what we'll do." Jaiwin turned to look at the 3,000 humans who had followed her here. They looked back at her, waiting for guidance. "We didn't ask for this responsibility, but our ancestors gave up everything to give us this chance. We have to finish what they started." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. A ship was approaching, a Valdris diplomatic vessel, damaged and limping. It broadcast an emergency signal. "Should we destroy it?" Sentinel 9 asked. "No," Jaiwin said. "Let it dock. Let's see what they want." The ship landed in one of the smaller bays. The airlock opened, and 2 figures emerged. One was Empress Vara, her shell cracked and damaged. The other was a younger Valdris that Jaiwin didn't recognize. The Empress approached slowly, her 4 arms held away from her body in a gesture of submission. "Please," she said, her voice carrying none of its usual authority. "I was wrong. My people were wrong. But the Void doesn't care about our politics. It doesn't care who was master and who was slave. It will consume everything. Why should we help you?" Suji asked, stepping forward. "You treated us like animals. You beat us, starved us, killed us. Why should we save you?" The young Valdris spoke up. "Because that's who humans are. I've studied your history, your ancient texts. Before the fall, when you ruled the stars, you protected the weak. You saved species that couldn't save themselves. You gave up everything to protect a galaxy that wasn't even grateful." He bowed his head. "My name is KRF. I'm a diplomat, and I'm asking you to be what your ancestors were. Be the shield that protects everyone, not just yourselves. Jaiwin looked at the faces around her. She saw anger, pain, and hatred for the species that had enslaved them, but she also saw something else. She saw the same quality that had made their ancestors sacrifice everything 10,000 years ago. We help them, Jaiwin said quietly, not because they deserve it, but because it's who we are. Sentinel-7's eyes glowed with approval. Then we must prepare. The void waits for no one. The void breach appeared at the edge of the galaxy, like a wound in space itself. It looked like someone had cut a hole in reality, and beyond that hole was nothing. Not darkness, not empty space, but absolute nothing. In its first day, it consumed 3 entire star systems. Billions of lives simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been at all. Jaiwin stood on the command deck of a Terran warship. The ship's name was written on its hull in letters she could now read. Reclamation. It was appropriate, she thought. They were reclaiming what humanity had lost. Around her, other humans worked at control stations, their hands moving with confidence over systems they'd never seen before. Their genetic memories guided them, teaching them as they worked. Miho sat at the navigation console. I've plotted the courses to all 12 Aegis stations. Some of them are in Vulture space. Some are in territories controlled by other species. And one, he paused, looking at Jaiwin. One is right at the edge of the void's expansion. That's the most dangerous position. I'll take that one, Jaiwin said immediately. I thought you might say that. Sentinel-7 stood beside her command chair, his massive form somehow fitting naturally on the bridge. It's also the most critical. If that station doesn't activate, the entire network will fail. Over the past 2 weeks, KRF had been working tirelessly. The young Vulture's diplomat had contacted dozens of species across the galaxy, explaining the situation, begging for cooperation. Most didn't believe him at first. Humans ruling the stars? Ancient weapons that could save the galaxy? It sounded like fantasy. Then the void consumed the Kralix homeworld. An entire civilization of 12 billion people vanished in an instant. After that, everyone believed. Even General Vixera, who had tried to kill them all, had sent a message. She had watched the void consume her border colonies, watched her ships disappear into that terrible nothing. The message was short. I was wrong. Tell me how to help. The human fleet gathered at Bastion 9 before departing. 12 ships, each crewed by humans who were still learning what they could do. Jaiwin had selected the other 11 team leaders carefully. Miho would lead one team, Suji another. Even some of the older humans who had spent their entire lives as slaves now commanded warships. Remember, Sentinel-7 told them all before they departed. You must activate the station simultaneously. If even one fails, the Aegis network won't form properly. The barrier will have gaps, and the void will pour through. We understand, Jaiwin said. She looked at the faces of the other commanders on the communication screens. They all looked scared. She was scared too. Our ancestors did this once before. They gave up everything to save the galaxy. We're asking for less. We just have to push a few buttons and trust in their technology. Easy for you to say. One of the other commanders joked nervously. You're not going to the station that's practically inside the void. No, Jaiwin smiled. I get that honor. The fleet split up, each ship heading to its assigned station. Jaiwin watched them disappear into faster-than-light travel, leaving trails of light behind them. Then Reclamation turned toward its own destination, toward the spreading darkness at the galaxy's edge. The journey took 2 days. As they got closer, Jaiwin could see the void on the display screens. It was growing, expanding, consuming everything in its path. Stars winked out as it touched them. Planets simply stopped existing. It was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. Station detected, Miho announced. It's at the coordinates, but... He checked his instruments twice. Half of it is already inside the void. Jaiwin's stomach dropped. Can we still activate it? I don't know. The control room is on the side that's still in normal space. But barely. Sentinel-7 placed a hand on her shoulder. I will accompany you. My shield should protect us from the void's effects, at least temporarily. They approached the station carefully. It was massive, a ring of metal and energy generators that could have encircled a small moon. But half of it was simply gone, not destroyed but erased. The edge where it met the void looked like someone had drawn a line across reality itself. Reclamation docked at the station's last remaining bay. Jaiwin, Sentinel-7, and a small team put on spacesuits and made their way through corridors that twisted and bent as the void consumed them inch by inch. Reality itself seemed to be falling apart around them. "Hurry!" Sentinel-7 urged. "The station is collapsing faster than expected." They reached the control room, just as a section of corridor behind them vanished into nothing. Jaiwin ran to the central console and placed her hands on it. The system recognized her DNA immediately and came to life. On her helmet display, she could see the status of the other 11 stations. 10 were green, ready for activation. 1 was yellow, still preparing. That was Suji's station, which had run into technical problems. "Come on, Suji," Jaiwin whispered. "You can do this." The minutes felt like hours. The void crept closer to the control room. Jaiwin could hear the metal of the station groaning as reality bent around them. Finally, Suji's station turned green. "All stations ready," Sentinel-7 announced. "Activating in 3, 2, 1 now." Jaiwin pressed the activation button. Around the galaxy, 11 other humans did the same at the exact same moment. She felt something strange, a connection to all of them, as if they were standing in the same room. She could feel their fear, their determination, their hope. The Aegis network came online. 12 stations activated simultaneously, each one generating a field of quantum-locked space-time. The fields connected, forming a barrier that wrapped around the entire galaxy like a shell. The void crashed against it like a wave against a cliff, and held. For the first time in 10,000 years, the void was truly contained. It pushed and pressed against the barrier, but couldn't break through. The galaxy was safe. Jaiwin collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Through her helmet, she could hear cheering from the other stations, from Reclamation, from across the communication network. They had done it. "Well done, Inheritor," Sentinel-7 said quietly. "Your ancestors will be proud." 3 months later, Jaiwin stood in the gardens of what used to be the Valdris Imperial Palace. It wasn't called that anymore. Now it was a hall of the Galactic Federation, where representatives from every species met as equals. The Valdris Empire had dissolved peacefully. Empress Zetvara had become chancellor of the new federation, and she had insisted that Jaiwin serve as guardian commander, leading the Sentinel fleet and protecting all species from future threats. It was strange, Jaiwin thought, how much had changed. Humans no longer cleaned the palace floors. They walked its halls as diplomats, scientists, and military officers. Some species still didn't trust them, still feared what humanity might become. But most were grateful. "The Council is asking for increased patrols near the barrier," Tar said, approaching her. The young Valdris had become her assistant and friend. "They're worried the Void might find a weakness." "It will," Jaiwin said. "Maybe not today, maybe not for 1,000 years. But it will try again. That's why we have to stay vigilant. That's why we have to stay strong." The end.